Thank you to all of you for joining us today. Welcome to MIHR's first annual webcast on hiring requirements for the Territories mining industry. If questions come up after the webinar is complete today and you didn't get a chance to ask, please feel free to email them to me and I'll be glad to include them in the questions and answers section with the recorded webinar. So getting things started in this session, we'll begin with a brief introduction to MIHR, followed by an overview of the Canadian mining labour market and MIHR's national hiring requirement forecasts for 2011. We'll then turn our attention to the needs in the territories and discuss the region's unique context. And just as a little preview for those of you listening from the territory region, it won't come as a surprise that that is characterized by rapid growth, a growing workforce, growing positive changes in employment, and young and migrant workforce compared to the rest of the country. So a little bit about MIHR, who we are and what we do. MIHR, or the Mining Industry Human Resources Council, is the national HR council for the minerals and metals industry. We are an industry-driven and industry-led organization that collaborates with a wide spectrum of stakeholders, and hundreds of industry leaders volunteer on our project steering committees and in helping us establish what the challenges are and what areas of programming are particularly of importance to the sector. Our core mandate is to identify the national HR challenges and opportunities for the minerals and metals industry, and to work as a catalyst and leader in the industry in creating national solutions through collaborations, partnerships, and synergies with all of our different stakeholder groups. We have many different stakeholder groups, and our partners and collaborators include mining employers, both from mineral exploration, extraction, mineral processing, and also aggregate producers. We partner and collaborate with national and provincial mining and exploration associations, with national organized labor groups, federal, provincial, and territorial governments and government representatives, post-secondary institutions and technical institutions, and also with Aboriginal and other special interest groups, mainly in the areas of youth and women in the sector. MIHR's strategic plan is divided into three key priority areas: attraction, retention, and transition, skills learning and mobility, and research for industry sustainability. Under our attraction, retention, and transition, or ART programs, we include tools and programs that increase workplace diversity, Aboriginal participation and inclusion, and retain talent. In addition, we have programs and tools that aggressively promote careers in the mining industry through our Explore for More brand and initiatives. Under skills learning and mobility, our key mandate is to identify and support the development of tools and systems that are required to ensure an appropriately skilled, effective, and mobile workforce. A core element of this programming area is an industry-led worker certification program that is based on industry-established national occupational standards for previously undesignated occupations. The program currently certifies surface miners, underground miners, and mineral process operators, and is right now in the process of piloting a program to certify diamond drillers and drill helpers. Along with the certification program, there's also in pilot a training accreditation program that's currently being piloted across the country. So for more information, and finally, let's not forget the reason that we're here today, the Research for Industry Sustainability programming area at MIHR. This is the programming area that incorporates all of our labor market information products and services, a number of research projects and research programs aimed at understanding and establishing what the HR issues and challenges are in the various regions and groupings in the mining sector, and also some recent research in the area of workforce planning and strategic human resources management research. So all of the discussions and content that we're bringing to you today comes from our Research for Industry Sustainability program. More information on MIHR, who we are, and what we do can be found on our website at www.mihr.ca. So please feel free to take a moment to go to our website and browse around and take a look at what programs and services are available to you in the particular programming areas that we have. In our Research for Industry Sustainability group, each year we provide the industry with an overview of the Canadian mining labor market and economic conditions that are driving employment in mining. And this section that we're about to embark on together provides you with a summary of our most recent National Mining Labor Market report. That's our 2011 National Labor Market report. So Canada's mining industry is a global leader. We have a diverse commodity basket in Canada and a value of mineral production that is amongst the highest in the world. In Canada, mining accounts for roughly 3.5% of the nation's real GDP. And demand for commodities continues to stay high in developing countries and will continue into the future. So the industry is going to face pressures in the next 10 years as we strive to meet the world demand. So along with capital allocation and cost management, human resources challenges are among one of the largest issues facing the industry and are recognized by most industry employers as one of their own key challenges. The recent recession led to a drop in demand and prices for commodities that in turn led to operations slowing or being suspended at over 30 sites across Canada. This suspension of activities led to reduced overall employment in the sector, and we'll talk in a little bit more detail about this link between economic conditions and employment in the sector on the next slide. However, the economic growth has resumed and employment levels are once again rising, and you'll see as we present the forecast today that there's a little bit of a blip in the short term, the first 2 years in the forecast, and largely due to this recovering employment levels. That said, economic uncertainty does continue, and we do caution a conservative approach to interpreting the forecasts that are presented to you today. Okay, so again, this slide will illustrate for you this tight link that I just mentioned between mining employment and economic conditions, and here measured as the minerals price index. MIHR research has recently showed a very strong positive relationship between commodity prices and mining employment. And what's being shown to you here is trends of mining employment over the past 5 or so years. And when I layer in the next line, the orange line that's about to appear, you will see that there is a tight connection or positive correlation between mining employment in Canada and movement in the minerals price index. It's slightly lagged so that the reactions or workforce adjustments when mineral prices drop is slightly lagged, and a little bit longer to recover once prices do return to positive. So when things are going well and mineral prices are high, employment in the sector tends to be high. When mineral prices drop and times get tight economically in the sector, there tends to be a strong and quick reaction for rapid workforce adjustments and lower levels of employment. Layered in with this tight link between employment and economic conditions in mining is also age demographics of the workforce and other labor market trends. So most importantly, in Canada, in the labor market in general, the baby boom generation is reaching retirement age or has reached retirement age, and there's a bit of a retirement bubble imminent or occurring. Eventually, the Canadian labor market will reach a point where there are more people eligible to leave than to enter it. And this is very true in the mining industry as well. It's in slightly more aged workforce than what you see in the Canadian labor market in general. You layer in with this that the Canadian mining labor force retires younger than what you see in the rest of the Canadian labor force, and you have somewhat of a perfect storm brewing in terms of the need to replace workers in the short and medium term. So in the national labor market, you'll see a retirement age of about 62-ish years. In Canadian mining, the average age of retirement consistently in the past several decades has been around 59 years. Now, there are some fluctuations and variations in different regions of the country, and when we get to talking about the territories region in isolation of the rest of the national industry, you'll hear a little bit of a different story there. But overall, the Canadian mining industry tends to retire younger. It's an aged workforce, so slightly more aged than the rest of the labor market. Layer in employment volatility due to that's driven by economic conditions. We have this perfect storm that's driving a need to replace a substantial amount of the mining workforce in the next 10 years. MIHR works hard to work with industry and identify sort of where some key areas of focus would be for you in addressing the looming labor market shortages. And our programming tends to focus on increasing attraction and retention of key talent groups, particularly including youth and women in the industry, new Canadians, and continuing to engage Aboriginal peoples in the sector. All of these things will be important to the industry in the short, medium, and long term in continuing to maintain Canada's strong position as a global leader. Each year, MIHR produces a 10-year employment and hiring requirement outlook for the sector. Our most recent one was released in August of this year, and we call it our 2011 National Forecast Report. So what we'll do in this section of the webinar is walk you through an overview of what you'll find in that report and introduce to you a neat little tool that you can have online to go in and play with the forecast that we do. Our national our hiring requirements forecast report is an annual report. Our 2011 report is an annual update of the report the larger report that we released in 2010. The 2011 edition incorporates small adjustments in our forecasting approach and revises the forecast to account for current economic conditions and changing demographic issues in the sector. Key sections of interest in our national report include an introduction and economic overview, sort of situating the current context or the context for the 10-year outlook that we talk about in the report. A look at our current labor market trends and what we see happening into the future in terms of labor market trends. Forecasts of our national hiring requirements broken down into look at change in employment and replacement requirements in terms of non-retirement separation, retirement separations. And forecasts for hiring requirements for 6 regions across Canada, and the Territories is one of those 6 regions. At the end of the report, you'll find a discussion of the broad HR issues and challenges facing the sector, and a discussion of the labor market trends that the forecasts are pointing to. MIHR's hiring requirement forecasts are based on an economic model that combines a number of factors, including commodity prices, measure of labor productivity, age and retirement rates, and non-retirement separation rates. Using a combination of independent forecasts and information collected from MIHR stakeholders and various government groups, our model produces forecasts under 3 different scenarios. A contractionary scenario that assumes very conservative outlook and worst case scenario for economic conditions. A baseline scenario that assumes sort of a status quo, things will remain as they are, and expansionary scenario that is a highly optimistic outlook on what conditions will be moving forward. So the overall hiring requirements forecast that we produce for Canada is developed by taking a number of inputs from various data sources, running them through and testing them through various model specifications to land on a model that best explains variation in employment, and then using that model to develop or produce employment forecasts for different regions in the 3 different scenarios across the country. We also, in addition to modeling employment, set a standard across the board assumption on non-retirement separations for the industry based on separation rates that are seen in the past. And thirdly, we look at age demographics in the sector and model retirement scenarios for the sector, and put it all together into an overall model of cumulative hiring requirements for the country. What you see in front of you is a bit of a diagram that shows you the step-by-step flow through in the methodology that we use. In orange, you see various points of inputs to our modeling, and in blue, you see output points. So for those of you that would like more detail than what we present here in our overview on how we do our forecast, you're certainly welcome to give me a shout, and I'd be happy to walk you through it. So all of our efforts then roll together to provide you with a national hiring requirements forecast. Again, divided out into 3 different scenarios: contractionary, baseline, and expansionary. And I'm going to focus in here on the baseline scenario. As you can see here, overall in Canada, we're projecting a slight contraction in terms of change in employment in the sector under a baseline scenario of about 1,000 workers out of a total of about 220,000 workers in the sector. But an overall cumulative hiring requirement of just over 112,000 workers between now and 2021, so with a 10-year outlook. What you see in the middle of this chart is what we call the replacement requirements, and that's showing you what's driving this hiring need. We're forecasting a need to replace over 67,000 workers due to retirement across the country, and just shy of 46,000 workers due to non-retirement separations or churn. So those are separations in the sector that are not retirement. So it could be leaving to go to another industry sector. It could be leaving the country to go work in mining in another country. It could be going back to school or taking a personal leave for whatever reason. So whatever whatever would cause somebody to leave the industry that's not retirement related. And under a contractionary scenario, you can see that we're forecasting, again, still positive cumulative hiring requirements of over 75,000, and again, being driven by the aging workforce and the need to replace workers due to retirement. So that's even with the assumptions that commodity prices are not doing well in the future and employment will contract in the sector. In our expansionary scenario, assuming that commodity prices do really well and the Canadian mining industry is strong, quite strong in the future and growing, assuming that we'll need to create over 20,000 new positions in the industry, we're forecasting cumulative hiring requirements of over 140,000 workers. So that, again, the key driver is the age of the workforce and replacement requirements due to retirements. So that's the 10-year outlook in a nutshell. For those of you who like more of a year-on-year look at things, we do provide a forecast breakdown in terms of 1 year to the next. So what you see in front of you is a graph that's going to build the 3 different components of our hiring requirements forecast. We're starting here with a look at change in employment. So in our national forecast under the baseline scenario, we're showing in 2011 and 2012 that little blip I talked about recovering from economic downturn, so the little bit of the economic recovery and the related employment recovery in the sector. Followed by general sort of smoothing out or reduced employment in the sector just ever so slightly to 2021. When we layer in our non-retirement separation assumptions, you see that year over year our forecasted hiring requirements after our initial blip are roughly around 5,000 workers a year. Our non-retirement separation rate we assume a non-retirement separation rate of about 2.5% each year. That's what you're seeing reflected there in light blue. And then in orange here, we are layering on replacement requirements due to retirement. So this is year over year following the age demographics or the changing age demographics of the workforce in the national mining industry, and showing the projected hiring or retirement in the sector, and then interpreting that as a hiring requirement. So you can see when you layer in the 3 factors, changes in employment, non-retirement separations, and retirement separations from the sector, we're left with a need to hire almost 10,000 workers each year out to 2021. So another way that we present our hiring requirements forecasts for you is in a short, medium, and long-term outlook. So a 2, 5, and 10-year forecasted outlook. So again, here we'll focus in on the baseline scenario there in the middle with a little bit of an orange highlight. In the short term, within the next 2 years, we're forecasting hiring requirements of over 41,000 workers across the country. Over the next 5 years, cumulatively, nearly 65,000 workers, and then of course by 2021, what we already showed you, that a little over 112,000 workers will be required. New to MIHR this past summer, and something that we're very excited about, was a labor market information portal, www.mininghrforecast.ca, where you can take a look at the hiring requirements forecast that I presented sort of in our traditional standard MIHR way, and customize them and change the assumptions to suit your own needs. So the forecasting tool itself, again, is available at www.mininghrforecast.ca. It's all you need to do when you get there is to click on launching the tool to take yourself into a forecasting tool website that gives you a brief overview of our labor market information work and links to some of the different reports that we produce under our mining industry workforce information network, and also contact information for us if you're interested in customized labor market information work that we'll talk about a little bit later on in the webinar today. So in terms of showing you what you can do in the employment forecasting tool, when you click into the tool, you're taken to a landing page that looks like this and shows you a little bit of instructions on how to use the tool, what the tool is all about, and starts walking you through some of the selections that you can make to customize or pull out a snapshot of MIHR's forecast. So let's say you're interested in a particular region and a particular occupation group. What you would do here is click on a particular region. So here, the prairies has a check mark here, but let's pretend it says territories and it's pointing to the territories. You can click on the territories and then select an occupational group, for example, chemical engineers, that you might be interested in a forecast for, and then click on the button to the right that says Create Forecast. When you do that, you'll be presented with MIHR's standard forecast using the assumptions that we lay out in our forecasting report, and I talked a little bit about in the overview of our national forecast. It's presented to you in different formats. So along the top, what you see are the assumptions that are used in the contractionary, baseline, and expansionary scenarios. We're showing you assumptions for labor productivity, for non-retirement separation rates, and for average retirement age that are standard to our national forecast. And then we graph for you a short, medium, and long-term outlook. In this case, it's in the form of a bar graph. If you prefer another graphing format, you can click on the button underneath the bar graph and it will change everything over into a line graph. So you can have the information presented to you in a line graph if that's what you prefer or need for your own reporting needs internally. And the other thing that we have here is a Excel-style table of giving you the numbers of what's being shown in the graphs. You can play with the assumptions that are shown to you in the MIHR forecast. So right here we're showing you the standard MIHR forecasts. And let's say for your particular conditions, those particular sets of assumptions may not make sense. You may want to try a different scenario setting. You can click on the button in the top right-hand corner there that says add a what-if scenario, and go in and change the assumptions that we have under our expansionary, baseline, and contractionary scenarios and set your own assumptions. So let's say in your particular company, the average age of retirement is not 59.5 years, but you know from your own workforce demographics that the average age of retirement in your company is 64 years. You can go in to whichever scenario you prefer, perhaps a baseline scenario, and change the average retirement age to, say, 64 years. You can change the assumption about labor productivity, and you can say in your company your non-retirement separation rate isn't 2.5, which for a lot of companies is quite a low rate. That's actually seen more in the overall labor market than will be seen in a particular company. You could change it to say my non-retirement separation in my company is 6%. You can plug in all of those numbers, and then in the bottom right-hand corner, once you're done tweaking the scenarios, you can ask the forecasting tool to apply your what-if scenario. Also, just as an aside, what you see represented here on the left is an example of what the line graphs would look like that we're bar graphs in the previous slide. So when you click on that apply what if scenario in the tool, you've then generated a customized forecast of hiring requirements. So what you'll see on the left when you do this is the MIHR standard set of assumptions, and then it's on the right will show you what your what-if assumptions were and what they have done to change the hiring requirements that the model the model outputs show. In the bottom right-hand corner of your customized forecast, you can export what you've done to Microsoft Excel spreadsheet, which will allow you to use the information in whatever format makes sense for your own particular needs. If you have questions on our forecasting tool, or you're interested in a customized forecast but you're not really sure what assumptions you should be setting or what makes sense for your region, at the end of the webinar today I will be explaining to you a little bit about what we have available to you in terms of customized research here at MIHR and how we can help you with that. We do have an info request service that you're perfectly welcome to email or call Ross or myself at any time and just double check what you've plugged into the forecasting tool. We can walk you through pointing and clicking if you're having technical difficulties and all of that. So don't be shy, we're here to help, and we're here to make sure that you have the labor market information that makes sense to you. Getting back to our national hiring requirements forecast, mineral deposits and as a result, mining activities and the people needed are not distributed evenly throughout the country, and that will come as no surprise to anybody. So as a result, the proportion of mining employment in each region is slightly different. So you see the bulk of mining employment in Ontario and Quebec and the prairie regions, and in the territories specifically, the baseline level of employment represents about 2% of the overall national mining industry. That said, when we get into talking about the replacement requirements and the hiring requirements for the territories, it may be 2% of the overall national mining industry, but mining represents a significant portion of employment in the territories themselves. So when we're talking about replacing certain numbers of workers, that can be interpreted as a significant challenge, even though it might only be a few hundred as opposed to tens of thousands that we talk about in other regions. So as a result of the mineral reserves and the deposits in the territories and the different regions in the country, and also as a result of the forecast prices for different commodities, over a 10-year period, not all regions are anticipating employment growth. In fact, only the prairies and the territories are projecting any kind of growth in terms of baseline employment in the sector. So as you can see here, your last orange bar or line is highlighting the territories for you. And over the short, medium, and long term, we're forecasting a positive change in employment of, on average, 1 to 1.5% in the baseline scenario. So if you look at the cumulative hiring requirements forecast for Canada under a baseline scenario over the next 10 years, regional hiring requirements are slightly different than the employment or proportion of employment that we talked about sooner. When you look at the regional hiring requirements of 112,000 workers to 2021 in Canada, about 3% of them are forecast to be coming from the territories region. And again, I caution when you're looking at the raw numbers that I'm about to show you that you keep in mind what those raw numbers mean in terms of the amount of employment in that particular region, and that when we talk about needing a few hundred workers in the territories versus tens of thousands in the prairies or Ontario and Quebec, that the need or the sense of urgency can still be the same or greater. So moving on, we've taken a close look at MIHR's forecasting tool, MIHR's hiring requirement forecasts for Canada as a whole. What we'd like to do for the remainder of the discussion is take a closer look at what is going on in the territories and provide you with a rundown of some of the unique conditions that we see in the territories. So as we said sort of throughout, one of the key characteristics that's different in the territories from the rest of the mining industry in Canada is this rapid employment growth that the region is being faced with. This has to do with a number of advanced development projects moving into construction and very close to moving into an extraction phase of the cycle. And also to a rich mineral reserve deposit in the region. The territories, mining in the territories is characterized by remote, what some would call rugged conditions, a lot of fly-in, fly-out operations. There's, you know, the colder temperatures and longer cold seasons all contribute to this sense of a remote, rugged working environment. And another key difference between the territories and some of the other regions in Canada are local hiring partnership agreements, or what many of you call impact and benefit agreements, in the area that promote and require local hiring, which has translated into a larger portion of the workforce in the territories self-identifying as being of Aboriginal descent. So looking at the 2006 census, we show in the mining industry in general about 6.8% of the mining workforce are of Aboriginal descent. This is higher than you see in the Canadian labor market, which sits around 4%. And so, you know, in general, the mining industry, because of the remote location of operations and proximity to Aboriginal communities, tends to employ more Aboriginal people than you see in other industry sectors. However, in the territories, approximately a third of the mining workforce self-identifies as being of Aboriginal descent, and this is most certainly something that changes some of the solutions and some of the discussion that we're going to have about how to meet the needs in the territories moving forward. Okay, so very similar to what we showed you for the national forecasts, here we're showing you a year-by-year forecast of the hiring requirements in the territories. You'll see reflected here this positive employment growth scenario that we were talking about just a little bit earlier, that we see also in the prairies, but in the territories here. That over the short term, there's a bit of a blip in 2011, 2012 that's somewhat related to recovery from economic downturn and re-engaging workforce that may have been let go during a recession, but also a reflection of mining activities in the region and you know, new mines that are in advanced development stage coming into production and requiring large numbers. And what we're showing you here, I'll remind you, is a baseline scenario. Depending on what's going on in your particular territory, as we all know, not all the territories have the same types of activities or in the same stage of maturity of the mining industry. So you may see even more requirements in one region over another. But overall, in a baseline scenario, so that's sort of the status quo with things moving forward, we're looking at positive changes in employment in the region. You layer in a 2.5% assumption on non-retirement churn or separations from the industry that are not due to retirement, and you see that we have positive hiring requirements every year over the next 10 years forecasted in the baseline scenario. And then finally, when we add in retirement in the territories, you see that we'll have, on average, over the course of the next 10 years, approximately 250 to 300 people a year needed, with a bit of a front-loading or a bulk of the requirements needed in the short and medium term, and about 200 a year over the long term. So what I'll flag for you here in terms of average age of retirement in the territories is, I was saying how in the national mining industry you see average age of retirement quite a bit younger at 59.5 years than what you see in the Canadian labor market, where they're retiring at around 62-ish years. In the territories, we see average age of retirement that's much more in line with what you see in the rest of Canada. So average age of retirement at around 62 years. That's somewhat a reflection of the maturity of the industry in the territories. When you have a number of new or nearly newly producing mines, and you tend to see younger workforce coming in and more of a retirement age on par with the rest of the Canadian labor force. There's a number of other factors at play, but that would be one of the key ones. Another one might be somewhat related to the types of commodities that are mined and the bonus structures that are available in the different mining operations. But predominantly this is an indication of the having sort of the new activities going on. So in addition to our year-on-year outlook, we do include a breakdown on a, I'm going to skip over this one and come back to it and start here, a 2, 5, and 10-year outlook for hiring requirements in the territories, just like we do for the national forecast. And as you see here, under the baseline scenario there in the orange, growing a little bit on your screen, over the short, medium, and long term, hiring requirements of just a little over 1,400 workers in the next 2 years, a little over 2,000 in the next 5 years, and over 3,000 over the 10-year forecasting period. Under a contractionary scenario, again, mainly driven by age demographics, you see a need to hire over a 10-year period, little shy of 1,300 workers, and in the expansionary scenario, just shy of 5,000 workers. And just like our as we do with our national forecasts, what I'll do here for you is show you hiring requirements broken down over various occupational categories. So MIHR's forecasts incorporate about 66 different occupations that are key to the mining industry. And what we do is we take our overall hiring requirements forecast and then proportion it out for each of the different occupations that we follow, that we forecast for. And then from there, we take a look at what are the 10 or top 10 occupations of need in terms of raw numbers over the forecasting period. So what you see here are the top 10 occupations in terms of numbers of individuals or numbers of hires needed over the 2, 5, and 10-year forecast period. A very similar discussion can happen here as what we were having earlier around raw numbers versus need are not one and the same. So where you see raw numbers of over 400 heavy equipment operators required, then you look further down in the list and you see approximately 70 geological and mineral technologists and technicians required in the industry. Those of you who work closely in staffing in the industry will be aware that there may be more of a crisis in some areas than others. So just because a raw number is high doesn't make it a priority for your particular company. So what we're doing here is just showing you in terms of raw numbers. And as you can see, the greatest needs in terms of numbers of hires over the next 10 years are in the heavy equipment operators, underground production and development miner category, truck drivers, mine laborers, and production managers. An interesting one that shows up in the territories that does not show up anywhere else in Canada as one of the top 10 occupations is the cooks category. And this is very much driven by the amount of mineral exploration activity that's going on in the territories compared to the rest of the country. And same is true for the geologists and geological mineral technologists and technicians, again reflecting the needs for a booming mineral exploration side of the sector. So by way of summary, compared to other regions in the country, the territories face unique context that drives unique challenges or issues for the sector. The territories has a relatively young workforce compared to the rest of the mining industry that retires at more of a standard age of retirement than is seen, certainly older than what is seen in the rest of the mining industry. Large portion of Aboriginal workers in the mining industry in the territories, somewhat related to the local community hiring partnership agreements, impact benefit agreements, and whatnot. There is rapid and positive overall average employment growth projected for the territories region, which somewhat has to do with current advanced development activities and projections on when they're coming online. It's characterized by remote and rugged conditions that impacts the ability to attract youth and workers from outside the territories, and tends to have what we call a transient workforce, mainly driven by the amounts of fly-in, fly-out operations that characterize the activities in the territories. Each of these different contexts sets up a different approach to attracting future workforce and addressing the shortages that are coming, that are predicted for the territories. So continuing to do all the incredible work that's being done in the territories around engaging and developing a local Aboriginal workforce, concentrating on the needs of the workforce in a fly-in, fly-out operation, and attracting young people to remote and rugged conditions, and looking for solutions with migration from both immigration and migration from other provinces as well as homegrown within the territory solutions to addressing labor shortages. So in addition to our annual national reports and our regional breakouts that we're doing through the webinars here, our Research for Industry Sustainability group also conducts a number of customized research activities for specific areas of the country. You know, you're absolutely welcome to call anytime and ask if you have a specific need for your organization or for your region. It is certainly something that we can help you with. Also, I want to highlight for you in our upcoming 2012 forecast report, you're going to see a few changes that are a reflection of our continued evolution of our forecasting capabilities and methodologies, and striving to bring you the most, the closest approximation that we can to future outlook. So what you'll see in the upcoming report is a refresh of our employment forecasting capabilities. So that's the first columns that you were seeing in the forecast of change in employment. So taking a closer look at how we're modeling employment and whether new factors ought to be considered. So right now they're predominantly driven by commodity prices and labor productivity, but we may be taking a closer look at whether we need to be commodity sensitive in our employment forecast. The other thing that you'll see in our upcoming labor market report is a look at what could be characterized as labor supply, but what we call available talent for the sector. So a look at who's leaving school and entering the labor market in each region, provincial mobility, interprovincial mobility, sort of in and out of the region, and international migration and re-entries into the labor market. So taking a look at those factors and comparing them to our hiring requirements forecast that we just talked about, and conducting a gap analysis between the hiring requirements that we're forecasting and the available talent for each occupation group that we look at over a 10-year period. So you'll see some of this appear in future reports starting in the summer of 2012, so this coming August. So that concludes the formal presentation side of the webinar today, and I'll now open the floor for a few questions and answers. And we'll have time for maybe 2, Ross?
Yep, and some of the ones that were submitted were actually answered further on in the presentation, so that's
good.
One of the ones is, do the scenarios reflect conditions prior to April 2011, or are they or is the information collected from later in this year reflecting the volatility in August in the United States, recent developments in European sovereign debt, and China's recent revision to growth projections?
Yeah, so our assumptions and data that feeds into our model is historic data, so you know, from a number of different sources. In our scenario setting, we are not as sophisticated as you would like that to be, so not down to a quarterly or current level of capability.
Another question is, what would be required to disaggregate the 3 territories for the purpose of employment forecasting tool?
So what I didn't tell you about in the main presentation that I might highlight here is that we're currently doing work in the Yukon Territory with the Yukon College's feasibility study for a Center for Northern Innovation in Mining. And we're currently looking at exactly how to disaggregate each of the territories in our forecasting capabilities. So what happens and why they were lumped together in the first place is that we have certain data limitations in some of our data inputs from data coming from various sources, one of which being Statistics Canada, and particularly on labor productivity, doesn't get disaggregated into each individual territory. for the purposes of not, not identifying individual companies. So if you were to disaggregate into each territory, we would be able to identify a company, and so they suppress that data to maintain confidentiality. So the way that we currently model, we restricted our forecast region to include the 3 territories together. What we're piloting with Yukon is an approach where we do our own on-the-ground survey work in the Yukon and produce our own measures to feed into the model. So stay tuned. You'll see reporting start to come out of that within the next year on disaggregating the various regions. So that's the time that we have for our webinar today. I thank you all for joining in and listening in. And as I said earlier, if you have a specific question or if you would like to talk in more depth about a question that you asked, if I didn't cover quite what you wanted to get into in the responses that we had, please feel free to email me at any time. mroberts@mihr.ca, or you can email me through research@mihr.ca, and I'd be happy to respond. We will include a questions and answer page with the recorded version of the webinar that goes up online on www.mihr.ca, and will indeed include any questions that come in after the fact. So again, thank you very much for your participation today. It was our pleasure to present our first annual territories forecast for you, and we look forward to working with you all again.